Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell.
All right, time once again for Music Night at the Majestic, and with us tonight, Buddy Whittington. Buddy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Michael. I appreciate being here.
Hey, not a problem. You say that now. We'll see how you feel once we wrap this thing up. I'll tell you, you're here to talk about Texas Scratch, which not only is it a band, but it's an album that blues fans have heard about for years that's finally seen the light of day.
It took us so long to get it going. We almost gave up. I mean, the original label that we were on, after we recorded, Jim Suhler and I jumped in his van one day and drove to Dover, New Jersey, and started recording. And 4 days later, we almost had all the basics done. And we later on, I added a couple of solos, and Jim had a Hammond player, Sean Ferris, that plays with his Dallas-based band, came and put some Hammond on it and had a little background vocals, but and a little extra mixing and stuff like that. But we had it going there before too long.
Yeah.
And then they shelved it in 2009, and we kept hearing that we ever so often we'd hear from the label, and they go, "Okay, guys, looks like this is going to happen here in the next couple of months, and get ready and let's do a contract on this and figure out publishing and blah blah blah." And then nothing would happen, April, July, November, and finally Bruce Corto at Corto Valley Records and Mike Carden picked it up and have put it out on Corto Valley. And we've really, it's been surprising how much attention they've paid to it. We're really proud of it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, before we get too deep, into the record, one of the things we always say on the show is every musician's journey starts somewhere. So where was that somewhere for you?
Well, I grew up in a household that there weren't any actual instrument playing musicians, but my sister was a very good singer. And she was also just a crazy record collector. She had 45s and LPs from just about anybody you can imagine. And I learned a lot from just being around her, you know what I mean? And I mean, she had John Mayall records when I was 8 years old, and not before I ever had any idea that I would ever play in that band. But, 18-year-old girl, high school girl, or 17-year-old high school girl with Jimmy Reed and Slim Harpo and, records. And then she had the Temptations and the Four Tops and all the English, all the British Invasion acts and just big stacks of them. And it was a big help. And my folks were more into Western swing and Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, that kind of thing, which is wonderful music. Mm-hmm. And I wish I'd paid more attention to it growing up, because I have always loved it. But I didn't put any attention into really learning how to play like Eldon Shamblin, you know what I mean? And not many people can do that anyway. But I have some really good friends that do it and that play that style, and it's really great music. But just there's some kind of music always going on. Like I say, we used to have these locally produced country TV shows, one called Cowtown Jamboree out of Fort Worth and one called Big D Jamboree out of Dallas. And they would have, it would be like an afternoon kind of a preview of the show that was going to go on that night that was televised to get people out to come to the show, And I would just tune in. Usually my dad was always watching, but I would always just tune in mostly to see what kind of guitars and amps those guys had, A lot of Telecasters and twin reverbs and super reverbs and, once in a while 335 and Gretsch or something like that. But they were all playing all that cool stuff.
Yeah. Now tell me this, given how diverse your sister's collection was, what were 2 or 3 of the records that she had that you found yourself really gravitating to, going back to more than the others?
Well, I mean, like I say, when I walked in a room one day and she had put all these posters of these guys from Liverpool up on the wall, and they're all like holding drinks and having cigarettes and these pictures. And I'm going, and these guys are like wholesome looking guys, except for they're drinking and smoking. You know what I mean? And then she had Meet the Beatles on her little stereophonic monaural or monaural, or however you say that, turntable. I remember hearing George Harrison singing "Don't Bother Me," you know, and I was thinking, boy, that guy's got a funny accent, you know, and, as opposed to not mine. But anyway, I listened to that record a lot, and I actually, when I was 15, or I guess I was 16 years old in 1972, and I saw ZZ Top, the very early ZZ Top, for $2.50 at a show in Dallas. It was one of their early, you know, they had just put out Rio Grande Mud, and that was a big influence.
Yeah. Okay. With ZZ, favorite album?
Yeah. Favorite album is his first album, I think, just because of the sounds on it. You know what I mean? And I still play a lot of those tunes in my little local thing. You know.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with that one.
No, I don't think so. And then and years later, John and Mayall and the guys, they had already played on the Afterburner and Recycler tours opening, and I thought, boy, I missed out on that. And then they did the Antenna album, and one day John comes in and goes, "Oh, those ZZ Top guys wants us to go out with them again." You know what I mean? I was like, "What?" So we jumped on a Midwestern tour with ZZ for 12 or 13 days across the Midwest. Wonderful times for me.
I would think.
You know, we just did like a 45-minute set, maybe a 50-minute set, and then I'd go over to the side and stand with Billy's guitar tech and watch him play the show. You know, and it was just wonderful times for me.
What's one of the shows that sticks out in your mind from that tour?
Going to the Rosemont Horizon in Chicago when they came out and started playing Jesus Just Left Chicago, and the roof came off of the place. You know what I
mean? Having seen them in that venue, I can tell you, yes, that happens.
And then, you know, when John Mayall turned 70 years old, it was a combination of Eagle Records and UNICEF, and they wanted to do a 70th birthday concert and have some special guests show up. And we kept hearing about it going, yeah, they say Eric Clapton's going to show up, blah, blah, blah. You know, he's never, and John hadn't talked to him, or I hadn't played with him in 38 something years. And sure enough, we got to Liverpool, and we had been out playing some gigs with Peter Green's Splinter Group, you know, and we've been playing with the Stan Webb's Chicken Shack and Mick Taylor and all the guys that had sort of been on the periphery of the Bluesbreakers back then. And when John turned 70, Eric did come and play, and Mick Taylor was on it. And Chris Barber, who's another valuable guy over there that had gotten a lot of the blues guys. He was a jazz guy that had gotten a lot of the blues guys to come over. I mean, he booked John Lee Hooker in England before anybody else did. And I think there was John gave me a copy of a contract once. I've still got it somewhere, where the Bluesbreakers were paid 90, or John himself was paid £90 to do this show and back John Lee Hooker. And I'm sure he would have done it for free, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, talking about John, you went from your sister exposing you to his music through her records to playing with them. What was that? First, your band opened for John, correct?
Right.
How you guys first crossed paths?
Yeah, there was a place in Dallas called the West End Marketplace and the Dallas Alley Complex, and we knew the guy that booked the bands over there, and he took pretty good care of us, putting us on those shows over there. One night, found myself opening for the Coco Montoya version of the Bluesbreakers, and I was playing. I looked down. There's John Mayall down there putting his legs on his keyboard. He didn't have a road manager or anybody or helping him out. And he just looks up and smiles. And after we got through playing, he says, "I don't have a record deal at the moment." He goes, "I'm looking at some things, and I think Coco's about to break away after 10 years in the band, and he's going to go do his thing. And I'll just might be in the market for a guitar player if you're interested, you know." I said, "You mean we haven't left yet?" At the time, I had my wife and I had a 3-year-old and a new one that had either just arrived or imminently going to. And I said, now this is going to entail me being gone a little bit. I mean, it was really as far as a road gig goes, it was really about as good as possible as far as family is concerned, because John's a family man too. And we would get out, and the most we ever stayed out was 2 months one time, and we only missed one show in 60 days because we were opening for Status Quo, and they had something go along with their lighting rig quit, and they canceled the gig. They couldn't do it in the dark, I guess. I don't know, but that was the only day that we missed in that whole 60-day thing of playing every day. And it just worked out. Now we got the kids are 30 and 33, so that's a lot of water under the bridge.
Yeah. Now tell me this. What was it like at that first gig playing with John? Is it, after those years of listening to the records, you look over and you're on there playing with him?
I was ready for it because, I mean, it took me a while I wanted to make sure and be ready, know the songs and know what I was going to do and everything. It was an awakening to actually be in the real music business. I mean, I've been playing all my life and I've been playing gigs all my life, but he took me to New York and played the Bottom Line, and I'm like, welcome to New York, Mr. Whittington,
Now, I know the guitar players, watching, listening, want to know your go-to is a Strat, correct?
Well, yeah, I like a 335 that I play some, and I've got several of them, but mostly I have a 63 Strat that my friend Mark Ballou found for me. He was the best man at my wedding, and he found this guitar and called up one day. He says, man, he goes, I've got a 63 Strat here I just found in a pawn shop. He goes, I'm going to sell it to another guy we knew, or still know. And he says, but I just want you to know that I have it. And I said, I'm going to see how it goes with him. If he doesn't buy it immediately, I'll make sure you get it. So I wound up, I think I gave him $500 for it or something like that, because he bought it for $125, and I played it for, I had that and another 65 that I played all through the band between 93 and 2008 most of the time. I mean, I'd take a Gibson out once in a while, but I tell you, the older I get, the old Les Paul gets heavier, and I'll put it on for a little while and go, but it's about enough of that, But yeah, it's like that old 63 is kind of like Johnny Cash's Cadillac. It's one piece at a time. I've had to replace parts on. I've still got all the old parts, but I've worn a neck out and had a couple of pickups go wrong on it. I had them rewound, and tuning machines and all that kind of stuff. But it's still in one piece.
It just keeps on chugging along.
And I have a couple of newer ones and perfectly fine guitars. There's just something they don't have that the old one has,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, I'll tell you, before we get too far along here, we better start talking about the record.
Okay.
How did you and Jim come to get this thing going with Vince and Jeff and
Arnie Goodman of I believe it was Blue Storm is his label. Blue Storm Music is his label. We all knew Arnie through going to playing in New York, and he and Carciano, the producer, and some other people from his label would always come out to our gigs. And Vince had already done. He had an album called Rattlesnake Guitar that Arnie put out, and he had played Oh Well and Rattlesnake Shake, I think, that from Fleetwood Mac, the original Fleetwood Mac, and he was at the studio in Dover, New Jersey when we got there, and he had already started working on it. And that's the first time I'd ever met Vince. I knew of him from his Sunset Heights band, because that was going on in the early days when I got with the Bluesbreakers, and we would see the posters where they were going to play, but I never had seen them. Anyway, we just got together and just started. I came with the idea to get together was bring a couple of new original tunes with you, and see how they worked out. And I think I had two. I had Texas Trios, which I wrote for that project, and And then I had one called I Got the Itch, but I Ain't Got the Scratch, which I think was partially, responsible for the title. Arnie Goodman, he says, let's call it Texas Scratch. And I'm going, well, why would we do that? He goes, well, scratch is money, isn't it? And I said, well, I suppose it could be, and that's how that came along. And then we had the third tune I brought was a tune by a gentleman from Fort Worth here called John Nitzinger. He had his album started coming out on Capitol Records in like 72. His first record was out, and he had this song called Louisiana Cockfight that everybody from around here, it was a regional hit for him. And he did very well with that first record. And, I've been playing at bands all my life. And I thought, well, now that Johnny's, he's not out playing, he's getting a little long in the tooth and he's not out playing like he used to. So let's just do Louisiana Cockfight as kind of a tip of the hat to him and his wife, Judy.
Yeah, very nice. Well, I'll tell you mentioned Texas Trio, the opening track that you did. Yeah.
That was I was just trying to think of something because I knew there was going to be three of us, you know what I mean? And I tried to mention all the three-piece bands that I liked growing up, you know what I mean? And try to mention as many of them by name as I could, just to make the song work. And I've had a lot of compliments on it. I think people like it. So hopefully more people can hear it.
Well, any song that mentions Buddy Holly is okay by me.
Yeah, me too. I got you.
Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite Holly song at this moment? Because I'm sure it changed. Like me, I'm sure it changes depending on what day and what mood.
The story I always think of is when they were recording in Clovis, New Mexico, with Norman Petty, and they're recording Peggy Sue, and Buddy doesn't want to stop playing rhythm guitar. He's playing rhythm and doesn't want to break to. He's got to switch his pickup switch on the back pickup to play the solo, and he doesn't want to stop playing rhythm and mess the track up. So they had Nikki Sullivan come out and sit in front of him, like kneel in front of him. And when the solo comes up, Nikki reached up and switched the pickup switch back on the treble pickup. And when he was done, he put it back up on the front where he'd have the soft sound again. I thought that's one of the great rock and roll stories there.
Absolutely.
So Peggy Sue is always a favorite. And also the one I remember hearing first by him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the thing about Buddy, is the fact that he's one of those few people who, no matter what style, since he covered a whole lot of bases on it, it was always, you could immediately tell that's a Buddy Holly song, whether it was True Love Ways, Heartbeat, or Peggy Sue. You knew it was Buddy, even though they're three completely different types of songs.
He was ahead of his time, and no telling what would have happened if he could have stuck around a little while longer.
Exactly. So, second track, I'd rather be lucky than good. I know, Jim wrote that one, and man, that track's got a good groove to it. You guys were rolling along.
I believe Jim and Tom Hambridge got together and they were working on some songs, and they wrote that together, and that was one that he came to the project with, and we just wanted to kind of keep it, like I say, the groove of it moving along, and the way it turned out, I think it sounds pretty good as far as. It changes. I think the key changes for a minute for when it gets to the solo, and you go through the solo, and then you're back on the one again. And he did a good job on that one.
Yeah. Well, then you go from there, from the groove into the smoldering blues of What the Devil Loves.
That was Vince, and I believe Vince was starting on that when we got to the studio. And we wound up, we would have the guitars on and just kind of sit there and look at each other like, okay, your turn. And then we play, 4 bars, and then the other guy played 4, and running around the room a few times until we had enough there to work with. I'm sure they did a little pruning and cutting, but I think everybody did enough to where we could each get to, make some noise on it.
Yeah. Well, then on Trip Hammer, which is the next track up on the album, Jeff Simon, you can really hear him pounding away on that track.
That's Jeff's thing. I mean, he's not a fancy drummer. He's a good drummer. You know what I mean? He's not one of these guys that plays too much just because he can. He
Mhm.
plays what the song needs, and Jeff's a great guy too. He's a wonderful guy to work with.
Yeah.
The studio we were at, the Showplace studio in Dover, New Jersey. Ben Elliott ran the place, and Ben had worked with Keith Richards and a bunch of people like that. He was just as happy to have us in there and work with us and helped us get it together. The funny thing about the place, it shared space with a strip bar. Like, I mean, there's literally there's a door in the middle of the studio. You open it up, walk through it, and you're in a strip bar. Actually, the sign called it a go-go bar. I think it has been there a long time. And there's a poster on the wall in the control room of Leslie West, and Leslie had signed it. Showplace Studios, great sounding room, worst looking girls.
Oh, that's funny. The now one of the things, with the album, as I was saying, you go from I'd rather be lucky than good, that's got the groove, and then you get the smoldering blues, and you get kind of a laid back thing going with Purple Mountain Flask.
Yeah, Jim said that was just something that he came up with, and I'm not sure if I think he had that one laying around before the project, and it's it is a little bit of a. I mean, it's like you say, it's not as intense as the other ones, but it's a great song, great lyrics. He told me, he says, I have no idea what a Purple Mountain Flask is. He goes, I just figured it was something you'd have in your back pocket. You know what I mean? You're going to have a flask,
Mhm.
you'll have it in your back pocket, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, then you mentioned Louisiana Cockfight before. The story behind it on Evil Do Right by You. The slide work on that's really nice.
Yeah, Jim he studied the Johnny Winter thing, and I mean, he really can make it work on that stuff. He mostly tunes the open G with a capo and brings you up to A, and just the idea of playing slide with a capo, I just don't, I can't, I can't relate. But my slide playing usually open tuning. I try to do it for a while in open E with the Dwayne Allman stuff, and I figured it seemed to me that it was better for me to do it in standard tuning. I'll never sound like Dwayne, but you know what I mean. It's just easier, made more sense to me to do it that way. And Jim's really got it down.
Mhm. Now, had you and Jim crossed paths, prior to this, playing gigs and stuff?
Oh yeah, yeah. Because like I say, I live in Fort Worth. He lives in Dallas, about 30 miles apart, and we play the same venues a lot. And if we're not playing together, sometimes we don't play together much. But I mean, we'll be on the same show, at we're one guy over for the other, and we played a while back. We played at Billy Bob's Texas, the world's largest honky tonk here in Fort Worth. We wound up there and played a little bit, and we've known each other a long time.
Yeah. Now, I would imagine that you guys probably shared a few good road stories. So, over the years, because I'm sure you had to seen some interesting things between playing with John and playing with George.
Oh, yeah, there was something every day with John. The best John story, the best one I can tell anyway. He had his road kit. He had an ancient suitcase that he would not, the guy could go buy the company, you know what I mean? But he had this ancient suitcase that he carried for years and years. And he was determined to wear it out on the road. And he would take an old avocado green coffee pot, electric coffee pot from the, 70s, and boil water in it. And he had 2 hot water bottles that he would put water from the coffee pot in. And then we had a pizza every night, actually 2 pizzas on his rider. And he would just put that he had a food bag that he would carry around, and in between keeping it cold in the belly of the airplane. And then when you get to the gig, he would take all the ice trays out of the mini bar in the hotel room and put his stuff in there to keep it semi-edible, Well, anyway, before the gig, he would make some hot water in the coffee pot, fill the hot water bottles up, and get a couple of slices of pizza wrapped up in wax paper, put them between the 2 hot water bottles and put it between the mattress and the box springs of his bed. And then we go do the gig. And on the way back, we get in the car and he go, "Oh, pizza ought to be about ready now, boys." I think that's what growing up in wartime England was, sort of had something to do with the way he was about food. Still is, I'm sure. John just turned 90 years old last November, right after Thanksgiving.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he I think he's finally, as far as touring, I think he's given it up, but I don't think he will ever quit. I mean, there's plenty of places. He lives in the Woodland Hills, and there's plenty of places there where he can go out and do a gig. You know what I mean? Just call somebody he knows up and go play some harp for somebody,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll tell you, you guys closed the record out with Showdown.
That's one of Jim's. That's one of Jim's sort of a homage to Hendrix, I believe. I think he was thinking about Up from the Skies, or one of those tunes where it's a little bit jazzy and a little bit simple. I mean, it stays on the 1 for most of the song, and then at the end on the solos on the way out, it goes up to 4 and kind of hangs there. And we all just sort of looked at each other and said, play a little bit here, play a little bit there, and try to get a taste of everybody's style in there. I like playing that tune.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned everybody's style. Who would you say are 2, 3 of the biggest influences on you in your style of playing?
Well, like I say, I started out playing country music in a band when I was probably 15, 16 years old. And at the time, Merle Haggard and his guitarist Roy Nichols were big heroes. Don Rich with Buck Owens. Billy Gibbons came along in '72 and rocked my world. What he was doing then, was just something that just the sound they got, and he had gotten Marshall amps in the States from Jeff Beck's guitar tech. You know what I mean? And that's what really brought it. And then when I got to go see him, the great thing was he had already modified the amps to where they were called Rio Grande amps. They looked like something that was made south of the border or something, but they were pretty much just dressed up Marshalls, but really cool stuff. One of these days I'm going to get one of those from him. I've talked to him about it before.
Good deal. Well, tell me this, you guys going to be hitting the road? Got any shows coming up?
Well, I've just got, like I say, all we have now are the 2 that I mentioned earlier, but we plan on doing it as soon as everybody can do it. We're going to, everybody's available and not beholden to their day job, their real job. We'll wind up getting out as much as we can. I really would like to get out and play the shows. And I have a lot of people say, man, we'll put you on up here if you guys will come up here. But, the way it is, it's difficult now out there since COVID, and so many places are closing. I mean, here in Fort Worth, there's been 3 or 4 clubs closed in the last month, and places that we normally, everybody in town has been playing at for in it a long time. And that's going on all over the country. So we're just going to have to wait and see, what the venues are, Yeah. Hopefully there'll be some theaters, that's sort of the next rung up from some of the clubs that we've played in the past, where you can go in a theater and not have to sit too close to somebody or worry about having somebody smoke on you or breathe on you, or,
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's, probably the next thing we'll do.
Yeah. Well, hopefully when you guys head out, you come through Chicago.
Oh, I hope so. Used to play Park West. And with John, that was another good one. We played.
That's a great venue.
Played Buddy Guys, Legends in the old building. I haven't been to the new one yet. I understand the lady that owned the building, the lease ran out on it, and she donated the building to the university there. Mm-hmm. And Buddy had to move, and I haven't been to the new place yet. But we had some great times playing there. We used to play Cordon Blues in St. Charles. That was a great gig. And then there's another place in Palatine called Dirty Nelly's that we used to play at. Had a wonderful time in Chicago.
Yep, been to all of them.
I wish I could get back up there and play some of them. Hopefully, I remember. I mean, I've been in Texas all my life, but I remember being in Chicago in December, and we had driven from Madison, Wisconsin or something like that, and it was 10 below outside, and I had to go outside for a minute to get something out of the car, a pedal or a cable or something. And I remember walking out and feeling the skin under my eyes freezing. And I was going, oh man, I got to get back inside. That was a little intense I mean, we get down in the teens. We might get down in the single digits once in a while, but boy, that was serious temperature.
Yeah. Sadly, that's a way of life up here.
I can imagine. But the thing about it, the summers are so great. You know what I mean? It's when it's warm, it's really,
When it's good, it's good. When it ain't, it ain't. That's pretty much it.
I remember we played the House of Blues there. Was it Marina City?
Yeah, Marina Towers. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a park down underground there one time when the weather was bad, and I was going, man, I don't know if I can get in here. I don't know if I can get out of here. It was crazy trying to just find. It was like Spinal Tap trying to find out where you're supposed to load in. But we had some good times there.
Yeah, Chicago is a great music city.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, hopefully you guys come through so I can go catch the show. So.
Please do. We'd love to have you.
All right. Well, tell me this, buddy. Is there anything else that you want to make sure we touch on here before we bring this one to a close?
Well, I suppose that's about it. I'm sure as soon as we do, I'll think of something. But I mean, I haven't had my coffee yet, so I'm not quite operating at full, capacity. But I should thank you for having me on the show.
Not a problem. And we've had social media info going across. Folks can go to QuartoValleyRecords.com to get info on the band. They can buy the CD there or digital, depending how they want to do it. But very enjoyable record.
There's also there's no website for it as of now, but there is a Facebook page called Texas Scratch where it's available. And like I say, you can get it from the label Quarto Valley, or it's also available on Amazon in physical form, in CD form, and you can download it anywhere they do that kind of thing. I don't know much about that. I mean, the new cars don't even have a CD player. If I had my way, I'd put a turntable in one.
Hey, Ford was the first one to do it. Maybe they'll bring it back.
Yeah, hope so.
Now that vinyl sales have come back.
If Elvis can do it, we ought to be able to try.
There you go. Well, on that note, buddy, we'll bring this one to a close. I do appreciate you taking the time to join me here on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I sure appreciate it. Hope to see you.
All right, everybody, have a good night.
Thank you.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.